I didn't know his name when I opened the car door. I only knew I was late. My phone was dying, and the app said a black Audi sedan would be waiting outside the gallery in 3 minutes. I'd spent the last 2 hours serving champagne to people who looked at art the way predators looked at prey. Cold, calculating, hungry. My feet ached. My tips were mediocre. I just wanted to go home. The car was idling at the curb when I stepped outside, sleek and silent under the streetlights. I glanced at my phone. The license plate matched. I opened the door and slid into the back seat without thinking. "Thank God," I muttered, tugging the door shut. "I thought you'd cancel on me. Can you take me to—" "Cancel it." The voice came from the front seat, low and smooth, with an edge that made my spine straighten. I looked up. The driver was watching me in the rearview mirror, and the breath stalled in my chest. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't frowning either. His expression was unreadable, carved from stone and shadow, dark eyes, sharp jaw, black suit that fit him like a weapon. He looked like he'd stepped out of a funeral or a war. "I'm sorry?" I said, my voice smaller than I wanted it to be. "Cancel the ride," he repeated, his gaze never leaving mine in the mirror. "I'm not your Uber." My heart kicked hard against my ribs. I reached for the door handle, but his voice stopped me. "Don't." One word. That was all it took. I froze, my fingers hovering over the metal. "I don't know you," I whispered. "No," he agreed. "You don't. Then why?" "Because you need a ride." He shifted slightly, and I saw the breadth of his shoulders, the controlled stillness in the way he held himself. "And I'm giving you one. I didn't ask you for anything." "I know." His eyes were still on me, dark and unblinking. "Cancel it, Mira." "My name." He said my name. Cold flooded through me, sharp and electric. "How do you know my name?" He didn't answer. Instead, he reached for something on the passenger seat and held it up, a slim black phone. My phone. The one I'd left on the bar inside the gallery when I'd gone to grab my coat. "You dropped this," he said quietly. I was returning it. Lies. I could feel it in the air between us, thick and humming, but I couldn't move, couldn't think past the fact that he had my phone, knew my name, and was sitting in a car that looked exactly like the one I'd ordered. "Who are you?" I asked. He tilted his head slightly, and for the first time, something flickered in his expression. Not quite amusement, not quite pity. "Someone you should be afraid of," he said. "But you're not, are you?" I should have been. Every instinct screamed at me to run. But there was something in his voice, something steady, almost protective, that made me hesitate. "I'll get out," I said finally. "Just give me my phone." "No." "Excuse me?" "You're not getting out." He set the phone down on the passenger seat and faced forward, his hands resting on the steering wheel. "And I'm not giving you your phone back until you're home safe. You can't just—" "I can." His voice was calm, absolute. "And I am." The car began to move. I stared at the back of his head, my pulse hammering in my ears. I should have screamed, should have thrown myself out of the moving vehicle. But I didn't. Instead, I sat there, frozen and breathless, as the city lights blurred past the windows. "Why are you doing this?" I whispered. He didn't answer right away. When he finally spoke, his voice was softer, almost gentle. "Because someone needs to." We drove in silence for 10 minutes. I watched the streets roll by, trying to memorize landmarks, trying to think. But my mind was spinning too fast, caught between fear and something else I couldn't name. He knew where I lived. He didn't ask for directions. He didn't check a GPS. He just drove, smooth and certain, until the car slowed in front of my apartment building. I stared at the familiar brick facade, my stomach twisting. "How—" "Go inside," he said, cutting me off. "Lock your door. Don't open it for anyone tonight." "Why?" My voice cracked. "What's happening?" He turned then, fully, and looked at me over his shoulder. Up close, he was even more devastating, beautiful in a way that felt dangerous, like staring into deep water. "Someone's been watching you," he said quietly. "Tonight that stops." "Who's watching me?" "People you don't want to meet." His gaze held mine, steady and unyielding. "Go inside, Mira. I'll be here until morning." "You'll what?" "I'll be here," he repeated. making sure no one else is. I didn't understand, didn't want to. But when I looked into his eyes, I saw something that made my chest ache, something raw and honest beneath all that control. He meant it. "Who are you?" I asked again, softer this time. His jaw tightened. For a moment, I thought he wouldn't answer. Then he leaned back, his expression smoothing into that unreadable mask again. "No one you need to worry about." He reached for the door handle and opened it from the inside, a clear dismissal. I hesitated, then grabbed my phone from the passenger seat and stepped out into the cold night air. The door closed behind me with a soft click. I stood on the sidewalk, clutching my phone, watching as he rolled down the window just enough to meet my eyes one last time. "Lock your door," he said. Then the window slid up, and he was gone, hidden behind tinted glass and shadow. I turned and walked toward my building on shaking legs. When I reached the front door, I glanced back. The black Audi was still there, parked under the streetlight like a sentinel. I went inside, locked the door, climbed the stairs to my apartment, and locked that door too. Then I stood in the darkness, my heart racing, and looked out the window. He was still there. I didn't sleep that night. I sat curled on my couch, wrapped in a blanket, staring at the glow of the streetlight outside. Every time I checked, the car was still there, unmoving, silent. Who was he? What did he want? And why did I feel safer knowing he was watching? By the time the sun rose, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, the car was gone. But on my doorstep, tucked under the mat, I found a single black card with no name, just a phone number embossed in silver. And on the back, in sharp, precise handwriting, "When you need me, call." I didn't call. For 3 days, I kept the card in my coat pocket, my fingers brushing against it every time I reached for my keys. I told myself I'd throw it away, burn it, forget the man in the black Audi and the way his voice had wrapped around my name like a promise. But I didn't. Instead, I kept it close, a secret pressed against my ribs. Life went back to normal, or what passed for normal. I worked my shifts at the gallery, smiled at patrons, poured drinks, and pretended I didn't feel eyes on me everywhere I went. But I did. In the subway, at the coffee shop, walking home after dark, someone was watching, and somehow, I knew it wasn't him. It was Thursday night when everything changed. I was closing up the gallery alone, wiping down glasses in the back room, when I heard the front door open. My manager had left an hour ago. The doors were locked. My heart stuttered. "We're closed," I called out, trying to keep my voice steady. No answer. I set down the glass and moved toward the doorway, my pulse quickening. The gallery was dim, most of the lights already off. Shadows pooled in the corners, thick and waiting. "Hello?" A figure stepped into the light. He was tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a gray suit that looked expensive. His smile was sharp, too wide, like something that belonged on a predator. "You're Mira," he said, not a question. I took a step back. "The gallery's closed. You need to leave. I'm not here for the art." He moved closer, slow and deliberate, and I saw the way his eyes dragged over me, cold and appraising. "I'm here for you." Fear spiked through me, bright and electric. I reached for my phone, but he was faster. He crossed the space between us in 2 strides and caught my wrist, his grip bruising. "Don't," he said softly. "We just want to talk." "We?" My voice shook. He smiled wider. "You've made some interesting friends, sweetheart. Friends who don't like competition." I didn't understand, didn't want to. I tried to pull away, but he tightened his hold, yanking me closer. "Let me go." The front door exploded open. Not opened, exploded. The sound was deafening, wood splintering, glass shattering. The man holding me spun around, his grip loosening just enough for me to wrench free. I stumbled backward, my hips slamming into the counter. And then I saw him, the man from the Audi. He stood in the doorway like an avenging angel, all dark suit and darker eyes, his presence filling the room until there was no air left. He didn't shout, didn't rush forward. He just looked at the man in the gray suit, and the temperature dropped 10 degrees. "Get out," he said quietly. The man in gray laughed, but it sounded hollow. "Dante. I should have known. Dante." His name was Dante. "You have 3 seconds," Dante said, his voice flat and final. Then I stopped being polite. "She's not worth this," the other man said, but he was already backing toward the door. Costas just wanted to send a message. 1. We didn't touch her. 2. The man in gray cursed under his breath and turned, disappearing into the night. I heard his footsteps pounding down the street, frantic and fading. Dante didn't move. He stood there, framed by broken glass and splintered wood, his gaze locked on the empty doorway. Then, slowly, he turned to look at me. "Are you hurt?" I couldn't speak. My throat was too tight, my hands shaking so badly I had to clutch the counter to stay upright. He crossed the room in 3 strides and stopped just in front of me, close enough that I could see the tension in his jaw, the controlled fury simmering beneath his calm exterior. "Mira." His voice was softer now, almost gentle. "Are you hurt?" I shook my head. His eyes searched mine, dark and unrelenting. Then he reached out, slow and careful, and took my wrist, the same one the other man had grabbed. His fingers were warm, his touch impossibly gentle as he turned my arm, checking for bruises. "He touched you," Dante said quietly. It wasn't a question. "I'm fine," I whispered. "No." He released my wrist and stepped back, his expression hardening. "You're not." "I don't understand," I said, my voice breaking. "Who was that? What did he want?" "Why?" "Because of me." The words came out flat, absolute. "He wanted you because of me." My chest tightened. "I don't even know you." "I know." Something flickered in his eyes, regret maybe, or guilt. "But they do." "Who's they?" He didn't answer. Instead, he pulled out his phone and made a call, his voice low and clipped. I couldn't hear what he said, but within minutes, 2 men in dark suits appeared at the door. Dante spoke to them in rapid Italian, gesturing toward the broken entrance, and they nodded, moving to secure the space. Then he turned back to me. "You're coming with me," he said. "No," I shook my head, panic rising. "I'm not going anywhere with you. Mira, you broke into my workplace. You just..." I gestured wildly at the shattered door. "Who are you?" His jaw tightened. For a moment, I thought he wouldn't answer. Then he stepped closer, his gaze pinning me in place. "Someone who's trying to keep you alive," he said quietly. "And right now that means getting you out of here. I'm calling the police. They can't help you." His voice was steady, unyielding. "The man who was just here works for people the police don't touch. You call them, and you'll be dead by morning." The words hit me like ice water. "Why?" I whispered. "Why do they care about me?" Dante's expression darkened. "Because I do." I didn't argue after that. Maybe I was in shock. Maybe I was too scared to think straight. Or maybe, deep down, I knew he was telling the truth. I let him lead me out of the gallery, past the broken door, and into the cold night air. The black Audi was waiting at the curb, engine running. He opened the back door and waited, his hand resting lightly on the frame. "Get in," he said. I hesitated, looking up at him. In the dim light, his face was all sharp angles and shadows, beautiful and brutal at once. "Where are we going?" I asked. "Somewhere safe." That's not an answer. His lips twitched, almost a smile. "No, it's not." I should have run, should have screamed, but I didn't. Instead, I climbed into the car, my heart pounding, and watched as he closed the door behind me. He slid into the driver's seat, and the car pulled away from the curb, smooth and silent. I stared out the window, watching the city blur past, and tried to ignore the way my hands were still shaking. "Dante," I said quietly. "Yes." "Am I in danger?" He didn't look at me. But when he spoke, his voice was low and honest, and edged with something that sounded almost like regret. "Yes." I closed my eyes and leaned back against the seat. "Then why did you save me?" For a long moment, he didn't answer. Then, so softly I almost didn't hear it, "Because I couldn't let them take you." The house was not what I expected. I'd imagined something cold and industrial, a warehouse. Maybe, or a sterile penthouse with too much glass and not enough warmth. But when Dante pulled through the iron gates and up the long, tree-lined driveway, I found myself staring at something else entirely. A mansion. Old stone, ivy-covered walls, tall windows glowing with soft amber light. It looked like something out of a Gothic novel, beautiful and imposing, perched on a hill overlooking the city like a crown. "Where are we?" I asked. "Home," Dante said simply. The car stopped in front of the entrance, and he stepped out, moving around to open my door. I climbed out on unsteady legs, my breath misting in the cold air. "This is your home?" "One of them." He said it so casually, like owning multiple mansions was perfectly normal. Maybe, for him, it was. I followed him up the stone steps and through the heavy front door. Inside, the house was even more breathtaking: high ceilings, dark wood, chandeliers that cast fractured light across marble floors. It smelled like old books and expensive cologne, with something underneath that I couldn't quite name. History, maybe. Or danger. A woman appeared from a side hallway, older, gray-haired, wearing a simple black dress. She nodded at Dante, her expression neutral, then glanced at me with something that might have been curiosity. "Maria," Dante said, "prepare the East Wing guest room." "Of course." Her voice was soft, accented. She disappeared without another word. Dante turned to me. "You'll stay here tonight. Tomorrow we'll talk." "About what?" "Everything." He gestured toward a sitting room off the main hall. "For now, sit. I'll get you something to eat." "I'm not hungry." "You're shaking." I looked down at my hands. He was right. They were trembling, fingers curled into fists. "Sit," he said again, softer this time. "Please." I didn't have the energy to argue. I moved into the sitting room and sank onto a velvet sofa, wrapping my arms around myself. The room was warm, a fire crackling in the stone fireplace, but I still felt cold. Dante disappeared, and I sat there in the flickering light, trying to make sense of everything. The man in the gallery, the shattered door, Dante's face when he'd said "because I couldn't let them take you." None of it made sense. But beneath the fear, beneath the confusion, there was something else. Something warm and terrifying and impossible to ignore. I felt safe here, with him, and I didn't know why. Dante returned with a tray: tea, bread, cheese, fruit. He set it on the low table in front of me and lowered himself into the chair across from the sofa, his movements controlled and graceful. "Eat," he said. I picked up the tea with shaking hands and took a sip. It was hot, sweet, laced with something herbal that calmed the trembling in my chest. "Thank you," I whispered. He nodded, watching me with those dark, unreadable eyes. "You said they wanted me because of you," I said finally. "What does that mean?" Dante leaned back, his fingers steepled in front of him. For a long moment, he didn't speak. Then, quietly, "I'm not a good man, Mira. I didn't ask if you were." His lips curved slightly, almost a smile. "No, you didn't. I asked what you are." "Dangerous." He said it simply, like stating a fact. "Powerful, connected to people and things you don't want to know about." "The Mafia," I said. He didn't flinch, didn't deny it. "Yes." The word hung in the air between us, heavy and final. "And the man at the gallery?" I asked. "Works for a rival family, Costas." Dante's jaw tightened. "He's been moving into my territory for months, pushing boundaries, testing me. And I'm what, collateral?" "No." His voice sharpened. "You're not collateral. You're—" He stopped, his expression darkening. "You're someone I should have stayed away from." My chest tightened. "Then why didn't you?" He looked at me then, really looked at me, and I saw something raw and unguarded in his eyes. "Because I couldn't." The fire crackled. The house settled around us, old wood creaking in the silence. "I don't understand," I whispered. "I know." He leaned forward, his elbows resting on his knees, his gaze never leaving mine. 3 weeks ago, you walked into a meeting I was conducting in the back room of that gallery. You were serving drinks. You smiled at me, asked if I needed anything. I remembered. The private event, the men in expensive suits who barely looked at me. "I thought you were just another guest," I said. "I know." His voice was softer now, almost gentle. "And that's why I couldn't forget you." My breath caught. "You looked at me like I was human," he continued. "Not a weapon, not a threat, just a man." He paused. "No one looks at me like that. Don't." I should have walked away. His hands tightened into fists. I should have let you live your life, safe and untouched. But I didn't. I kept tabs on you. Made sure you got home safely. Watched from a distance. You were stalking me, I said. But there was no heat in it. Yes. He didn't apologize. Didn't look away. And now because of that, you're in danger. Because Costas knows you're watching me. Yes. I set down the teacup, my hands steadier now. So what happens now? You stay here. His voice was firm, absolute. Under my protection. Until this is over. And if I don't want to? His expression didn't change. Then you die. The words were brutal, honest. They hit me like a slap. That's not a choice, I said quietly. No, he agreed. It's not. Maria showed me to my room an hour later, a beautiful space with tall windows, soft bedding, and a view of the gardens below. She left me with fresh clothes, toiletries, and a quiet assurance that I was safe here, but I didn't feel safe. I felt trapped. And yet, as I stood at the window, staring out at the dark grounds lit by scattered lanterns, I couldn't stop thinking about the way Dante had looked at me, like I mattered, like I was something worth protecting. I changed into the soft nightgown Maria had left and climbed into bed, pulling the blankets up to my chin. The house was silent, but I could feel its weight around me, heavy with history and secrets and danger. I closed my eyes and tried to sleep, but all I saw was Dante's face. All I heard was his voice, because I couldn't let them take you. I woke to the sound of voices, low, tense, speaking rapid Italian just outside my door. I sat up, my heart pounding, and crept to the door, pressing my ear against the wood. Dante's voice, sharp and commanding. Another man, older, arguing back. The words were too fast for me to follow, but the tone was clear. Anger, frustration, danger. Then, suddenly, silence. Footsteps retreated down the hall. I stood there, frozen, my hand on the doorknob, and then, so softly I almost didn't hear it. Go back to sleep, Mira. Dante's voice, quiet and certain, just on the other side of the door. I stepped back, my breath catching. He'd known I was listening. I climbed back into bed, my pulse racing, and pulled the blankets tight around me. But I didn't sleep, because I knew, deep in my bones, that everything had changed, and there was no going back. I woke to sunlight streaming through the tall windows and the smell of coffee drifting up from somewhere below. For a moment, I forgot where I was. Then it all came rushing back the gallery, the man in the gray suit, Dante's dark eyes as he said, "You're coming with me." I sat up slowly, my body stiff with tension. The room was exactly as I'd left it, serene and untouched. But outside I could hear movement, voices. The low rumble of cars on gravel. I dressed quickly in the clothes Maria had left, simple jeans, a soft sweater, and ventured out into the hallway. The house was even more intimidating in daylight. Portraits lined the walls, stern-faced men and elegant women staring down at me with knowing eyes. The floors gleamed. Everything smelled like lemon polish and old money. I followed the sound of voices downstairs and found myself in a massive kitchen, all white marble and dark wood. Maria was at the stove, and Dante stood near the window, phone pressed to his ear, speaking in low, clipped Italian. He glanced up when I entered, and something shifted in his expression, softened. Just for a second, before the mask slid back into place. He ended the call. "Good morning," he said. "Is it?" I moved to the counter, where Maria had set out coffee and pastries. "It doesn't feel like it." Dante's jaw tightened. "Sit, we need to talk." I poured myself coffee and sat at the long table, wrapping my hands around the warm mug. Dante took the seat across from me. His posture relaxed, but his eyes sharp. "Costas made a move last night," he said without preamble. "After the gallery." My stomach dropped. "What kind of move?" "He hit one of my warehouses, burned it to the ground." Dante's voice was calm, but I could see the fury simmering beneath. "He's sending a message." "What message?" "That he's not afraid of me." Dante leaned back, his fingers drumming once against the table. "And that he knows about you." The coffee turned bitter in my mouth. "So I'm bait." "No." His voice sharpened. "You're leverage. There's a difference." "Not to me." His eyes met mine, dark and steady. "I won't let him use you." "You already did." The words came out harsher than I intended. The moment you decided to watch me, you put a target on my back. Dante didn't flinch. Yes. The honesty of it stole my breath. I won't apologize for protecting you, he continued quietly. But I will keep you safe, no matter what it costs. Why? I set down the mug, my hands shaking. You don't owe me anything. We're strangers. No, he said softly. We're not. The weight of his gaze was almost unbearable. I looked away, staring down at my coffee. What happens now? I asked. You stay here. You don't leave the grounds. You don't contact anyone, not your friends, not your family, not your work. For how long? Until it's over. And when will that be? Dante's expression darkened. When Costas is no longer a threat. You mean when he's dead? He didn't deny it. I stood abruptly, the chair scraping against the floor. I can't just disappear. People will notice. My roommate, my boss. Already handled. Dante rose as well, moving around the table toward me. Your roommate thinks you took an emergency trip to visit your sick aunt. Your boss thinks you quit. I stared at him, anger flaring hot in my chest. You had no right. I had every right. He stopped just in front of me, close enough that I could smell the faint trace of his cologne, cedar and smoke. Your life is more important than your job. To you maybe, not to me. Then you're not thinking clearly. Or maybe you're thinking too much. My voice rose, cracking. Maybe I don't want to be here. Maybe I don't want your protection or your control or me? His voice dropped, low and dangerous. Say it, Mira. If you want me to walk away, say it. I opened my mouth, closed it. The words wouldn't come, because I didn't want him to walk away, and that terrified me more than anything. Dante's expression softened, just slightly. He lifted one hand, slow and careful, and brushed a strand of hair from my face. His touch was feather-light, but it burned. You're angry, he said quietly. You should be, but you're also alive, and that's what matters. I swallowed hard. I don't know how to do this. Do what? Trust you. His hand dropped, and something flickered in his eyes, pain, maybe, or regret. Then don't, but stay anyway. The days blurred together after that. I spent most of my time in the library, a massive room lined, floor to ceiling with books, a fireplace that was always lit, windows overlooking the gardens. It was the only place in the house that felt like mine. Maria brought me meals. Dante appeared and disappeared, always surrounded by men in dark suits, always on his phone, always tense. I caught glimpses of his world-hushed conversations, late-night meetings, the controlled fury that simmered just beneath his calm exterior. But at night, he came to the library. He never stayed long, never said much. He'd pour himself a drink, sit in the chair by the fire, and watch me read. Sometimes he'd ask about the book. Sometimes we'd sit in silence. I should have hated it, but I didn't. Because in those quiet moments, he wasn't the Mafia boss. He wasn't dangerous or untouchable. He was just a man who looked at me like I was the only thing in the world worth protecting. On the 5th night, I broke the silence. Why me? I asked, setting down my book. Dante looked up from his glass, his expression unreadable. What? Why me? I repeated. You said I smiled at you. Asked if you needed anything. That's it. That's all I did. So why am I here? He was quiet for a long moment, his gaze distant. Then he leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. Because you looked at me like I mattered, he said softly. Not my name, not my power, just me. My chest tightened. That's not enough. It is for me. I stood, moving to the window. Outside, the gardens were dark, shadows pooling beneath the trees. I don't understand your world. Good. His voice was closer now. I turned, and he was standing just behind me, his reflection ghostly in the glass. You shouldn't. Then why keep me in it? Because the alternative is losing you. He said it simply, like it was the only truth that mattered, and I can't do that. I turned to face him fully. He was so close, close enough that I could see the tension in his jaw, the way his hands were clenched at his sides. Dante, I whispered. Yes, I'm scared. I know. Not of them. I swallowed hard. Of you. His expression cracked, Just for a second, something raw and broken beneath the surface. You should be. Why? Because I'm not letting you go. The words hung between us, heavy and final. I should have run. Should have demanded he take me home, let me leave, give me back my life. But I didn't. Instead, I reached out, slow and hesitant, and placed my hand over his. His fingers closed around mine, warm and strong and impossibly gentle. Stay, he said quietly. It wasn't a command, it was a plea. And God help me, I nodded. The nightmares started on the 6th night. I woke, gasping, tangled in sheets. The image of the man in the gray suit burned into my mind. His hands on my wrist, his cold smile. The way he'd said, we just want to talk, like it was something reasonable. I sat up, pressing my hands to my face, trying to slow my racing heart. A knock at the door. Mira, Dante's voice, low and certain. I didn't answer. Couldn't. My throat was too tight. The door opened anyway. He stepped inside, barefoot, wearing dark pants and a white shirt unbuttoned at the collar. He looked less polished than usual, more human. You're awake, he said. I'm fine. You're lying. I glared at him, but there was no heat in it. Just exhaustion. He crossed the room and sat on the edge of the bed, keeping a careful distance. Nightmare? How did you know? I heard you. He gestured vaguely toward the hall. My room's next door. Of course it was. I'm fine, I repeated. Mira. He leaned forward, his expression serious. If you keep saying that, I'm going to start believing you don't trust me. I don't. Fair enough. His lips twitched, almost a smile. But I'm not leaving until you sleep. You can't just watch me. He stood, moved to the armchair by the window, and sat, settling in like he had all the time in the world. I stared at him. You're really going to stay here all night? Yes. That's ridiculous. Probably. He leaned his head back, closing his eyes. But I'm doing it anyway. I should have argued, should have kicked him out. But the truth was, I didn't want to be alone. So I lay back down, pulling the blankets up to my chin, and watched him in the dim light. Dante? Thank you. He opened his eyes, and even in the darkness, I could see the way he looked at me, steady and unwavering. Always, he said quietly. The next morning, I woke to find him still there, asleep in the chair, his head tilted back, his expression softer than I'd ever seen it. I watched him for a moment, my chest aching with something I couldn't name. Then I slipped out of bed and went downstairs. Maria was in the kitchen, as always. She smiled when she saw me, a small, knowing smile that made my cheeks flush. Good morning, Kara. Good morning. Coffee. Please. She poured me a cup and set it in front of me, then went back to chopping vegetables. I sipped the coffee in silence, trying to ignore the weight of her gaze. He's a good man, Maria said finally. I looked up. What? Mr. Dante, she gestured with the knife. People see the power, the danger. But underneath, he's good. He's a criminal. Yes. She said it simply, without shame. But he's also kind, loyal. He takes care of the people he loves. I stopped, the words catching in my throat. Maria smiled. Not yet. She went back to chopping, and I sat there, staring into my coffee, trying to make sense of the knot in my chest. Dante found me in the library an hour later. You left, he said, leaning against the doorframe. You were asleep. I noticed. He moved into the room, his gaze sweeping over me. Did you eat? Yes. Good. He crossed to the window, staring out at the gardens. I have to leave for a few hours today. My stomach dropped. Leave? Business. His jaw tightened. Nothing dangerous, but I need you to stay here. Don't go outside. Don't answer the door. I'm not a child, Dante. I know. He turned, and the intensity in his eyes made my breath catch. But you're mine to protect, and I take that seriously. I'm not yours. He stepped closer, slow and deliberate, until he was standing just in front of me. Aren't you? My heart hammered against my ribs. I should have denied it, should have pushed him away, but I didn't, because deep down, in a place I didn't want to examine too closely, I knew he was right. "I'll be back by evening," he said quietly. "Maria will be here if you need anything." "Okay." He reached out, hesitant, and touched my cheek, just a brush of his fingers. So brief I almost thought I'd imagined it. Then he was gone. The house felt emptier without him. I tried to read, but the words blurred together. I tried to nap, but sleep wouldn't come. Finally, I gave up and wandered the halls, exploring rooms I hadn't seen before. A study, lined with maps and documents. A wine cellar that smelled like earth and oak. A music room with a grand piano covered in dust. And then, at the end of a long hallway, a door slightly ajar. I hesitated, then pushed it open. It was Dante's room. I knew I shouldn't go inside, knew it was a violation of privacy, but I couldn't help myself. The room was simpler than I'd expected. A large bed, dark wood furniture, a single window overlooking the grounds. But what caught my eye was the desk. Papers, photographs, maps marked with red ink, and in the center, a single photo. Of me. I picked it up with shaking hands. It was from the gallery, the night I'd first seen him. I was smiling, balancing a tray of champagne glasses, completely unaware of the camera, or of him. "I told you," a voice said behind me. "I kept tabs on you." I spun around. Dante stood in the doorway, his expression unreadable. "I'm sorry," I stammered. "I didn't mean to." "It's fine." He moved into the room, his gaze never leaving mine. "You were going to find out eventually." "Find out what?" "That I've been watching you for weeks." He stopped in front of me, close enough that I could feel the heat of him. "That I know your schedule, your routines, your favorite coffee shop. That I've been protecting you long before you knew you needed it." "That's..." I swallowed hard. "That's insane." "Yes." He didn't look away. "But it's also true." I stared at him, my mind spinning. "Why?" "Because the moment I saw you, I knew." His voice was low, raw. "I knew you were going to change everything." "Don't." I should have stayed away. His hands clenched at his sides. "I should have let you live your life, but I couldn't. I tried, and I failed. I don't understand." "I know." He reached out, slow and careful, and cupped my face in his hands. "But you will." His touch was warm, steady, and I felt myself leaning into it, my eyes fluttering closed. "Dante," I whispered. "Yes." "I'm scared." "Of me?" "Of this." His thumb brushed across my cheek, achingly gentle. "Then be scared, but don't leave." I opened my eyes and found him watching me, his expression open and vulnerable in a way I'd never seen. "I won't," I said softly, and I meant it. The days stretched into a week, then 2. I fell into a rhythm, mornings in the library, afternoons in the gardens under the watchful eyes of Dante's men, evenings by the fire. Maria became a quiet companion, teaching me Italian phrases and telling me stories about the house. And Dante. Dante was everywhere and nowhere. He'd disappear for hours, sometimes days, returning late at night with tension carved into his shoulders. But he always came to find me, always checked to make sure I was safe. And every night, he'd sit in the library with me, drinking whiskey and watching the firelight play across my face. We didn't talk much. We didn't need to. Because something was building between us, something slow and inevitable, like a storm gathering on the horizon. It broke on a Tuesday. I was in the garden, sitting on a stone bench beneath the trees, when I heard shouting. Not Italian this time, English. Angry, violent. I stood, my heart racing, and followed the sound to the front of the house. Dante stood on the steps, facing a man I didn't recognize. Older, gray-haired, wearing an expensive suit. His face was red, his hands gesturing wildly. "You're making a mistake," the man snarled. "No," Dante's voice was calm, deadly. "You made the mistake. I'm just correcting it. She's not worth this." "Say that again." Dante's tone dropped, razor sharp. "I dare you." The man paled. He opened his mouth, then closed it, shaking his head. "You're going to start a war. Then let it start." The man turned and stormed toward a waiting car. The engine roared to life, and he was gone, leaving nothing but dust and tension. Dante stood there for a moment, his shoulders tight, his hands clenched. Then he turned and saw me. His expression shuddered immediately. "How much did you hear?" he asked. "Enough." I moved toward him, my pulse pounding. "Who was that?" "Someone who thinks he has a say in my decisions." "And does he?" "No." I stopped at the bottom of the steps, looking up at him. What war was he talking about? Dante's jaw tightened. "Mira, don't." I cut him off, my voice shaking. "Don't lie to me. Not now." He stared at me for a long moment, something dark and conflicted flickering in his eyes. Then he descended the steps, stopping just in front of me. "Costas isn't acting alone," he said quietly. "He has backing. Other families, people who think I've grown too powerful." He paused. "Keeping you here, protecting you, it's seen as a weakness, because I'm not part of your world." "Yes. And if you let me go, it doesn't matter." His voice was flat, absolute. "I'm not letting you go, even if it means war." Even then, the weight of it crashed over me, the realization of what I meant to him, what he was risking. Not just his power, his life, his entire empire. For me. "Why?" I whispered. He reached out, his hand trembling slightly as he tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. "Because you matter more. Don't. I know what I am," he continued, his voice rough. "I know what I do. The blood on my hands, the darkness I live in. But when I'm with you..." He paused, his gaze searching mine. "I don't feel that darkness. I feel human." My breath caught. "I can't explain it," he said softly. "I don't understand it. I just know that losing you isn't an option. You barely know me. I know enough." His hand moved to cup my cheek, his touch achingly gentle. "I know you're kind, brave, that you see the world in colors I forgot existed, that you smile at strangers and believe in second chances." His thumb brushed across my skin. "I know that you make me want to be better." Tears pricked at my eyes. "I can't be your redemption. I'm not asking you to be." He leaned closer, his forehead almost touching mine. "I'm just asking you to stay." "For how long?" "As long as you'll let me keep you." The world narrowed to the space between us. His warmth, his breath, the steady thrum of his heartbeat. "Dante," I whispered. "Yes, I'm terrified." "So am I." He said it so quietly, so honestly, that something inside me cracked open. I lifted my hand, hesitant, and placed it against his chest. His heart raced beneath my palm, fast and frantic. "I don't know how to do this," I said. "Neither do I." His hand covered mine, holding it in place. "But I want to try." I looked up at him, at the vulnerability in his eyes, the way he was looking at me like I was something precious. And I realized, with a rush of clarity that stole my breath, I wanted to try too. "Okay," I whispered. His eyes darkened. "Okay?" "Okay." That night, he didn't leave the library. We sat by the fire, close but not touching, the silence between us humming with unspoken things. "Tell me about your family," I said finally. Dante's expression tightened. "There's not much to tell. Try." He was quiet for a long moment, staring into the flames. Then, slowly, "My father was powerful, ruthless. He built an empire on fear and loyalty." He paused. "He taught me that emotions were weakness, that love made you vulnerable. Do you believe that?" "I used to." He glanced at me, something soft in his eyes. "Not anymore." "What changed?" "You." The word hung between us, simple and devastating. "My father died when I was 22, Dante continued. "An ambush. They shot him in the street like a dog." His hands tightened into fists. "I inherited everything. The power, the enemies, the blood. I'm sorry." "Don't be." His voice was flat. He made his choices. So did I. "Do you regret them?" He looked at me then, really looked at me, and I saw the weight of his world in his eyes. "Only one," he said quietly. "Which one?" "Not finding you sooner." My breath hitched. I opened my mouth, but no words came. Dante stood, crossing to the window. "You should rest. It's late." "Dante." "Good night, Mira." He left before I could stop him, but the ache in his voice lingered long after he was gone. I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying his words over and over. Not finding you sooner. What did that mean? That he wanted more time? That he regretted the danger? Or that he wished we'd met in another life? Where he wasn't this and I wasn't caught in his web? I threw off the blankets and padded to the door, pulling it open. The hallway was dark and silent. I hesitated, then walked to the next door and knocked softly. Dante? No answer. I pushed the door open. His room was empty, the bed untouched. I found him on the terrace at the end of the hall, standing at the railing, staring out at the city lights below. His shirt was untucked, his sleeves rolled up, a glass of whiskey in his hand. Couldn't sleep? He asked without turning. No, neither could I. I moved to stand beside him, wrapping my arms around myself against the cold. What are you thinking about? I asked. How much I want to touch you. His voice was low, strained. And how much I shouldn't. My pulse quickened. Why shouldn't you? Because once I start, I won't stop. He turned to look at me, and the hunger in his eyes made my knees weak. And you deserve better than this, better than me. Maybe I don't want better. His jaw clenched. Mira, maybe I just want you. The words came out barely above a whisper, but they hit him like a blow. He set down the glass, his hands gripping the railing. You don't know what you're saying. Yes, I said softly. I do. He turned fully, his gaze burning into mine. If I touch you now, everything changes. I know. You'll be mine. His voice was rough, desperate. Completely. I already am, I whispered. Something broke in him. He crossed the distance between us in 2 strides, his hands cupping my face, and kissed me. It wasn't gentle. It wasn't soft. It was fire and need and weeks of restraint shattering all at once. I gasped against his mouth, and he deepened the kiss, his hands sliding into my hair, holding me like I was the only thing keeping him tethered to the earth. I melted into him, my hands fisting in his shirt, and kissed him back with everything I had. When he finally pulled away, we were both breathing hard. Mira, he rasped, his forehead pressed to mine. Don't stop, I whispered. And he didn't. He carried me inside. I should have felt embarrassed, but I didn't. I just held on, my face buried in his neck, breathing in the scent of him smoke and cedar and something darker, something uniquely his. He brought me to his room and set me down gently on the edge of the bed, his hands lingering on my waist. Mira. His voice was strained, his eyes searching mine. If you want me to stop, say it now. I looked up at him, at the tension in his shoulders, the barely leashed control in his expression. I don't want you to stop, I said quietly. His hands tightened on my waist. You're shaking. I know. Are you afraid? I hesitated, then nodded. A little. Of me? Of how much I want this. Something shifted in his expression, softened, just slightly. He knelt in front of me, his hands moving to cradle my face. Then we go slow, he said quietly. We stop whenever you want, and if you change your mind, I won't. But if you do, he continued, his gaze steady, you tell me. Promise me. I promise. He kissed me again, softer this time, his lips moving against mine with a tenderness that made my chest ache. I leaned into him, my hands sliding up to tangle in his hair, and he made a low sound in the back of his throat. Dante, I whispered. I'm here. He eased me back onto the bed, his body covering mine, careful not to crush me. His hands moved slowly, reverently, tracing the curve of my waist, the line of my ribs, like he was memorizing every inch. I trembled beneath him, overwhelmed by the weight of him, the heat, the intensity. Still okay? He murmured against my neck. I nodded, unable to speak. He lifted his head, his eyes dark and serious. Words, Mira. I need words. Yes, I breathed. I'm okay. He kissed me again, deeper this time, and I felt myself unraveling beneath him, all the fear, all the tension, melting away until there was nothing left but him and me and the feeling of his hands on my skin. He undressed me slowly, his fingers trembling slightly as he worked the buttons of my shirt. Beautiful, he whispered, his gaze sweeping over me. You're so damn beautiful. My cheeks burned. I wanted to cover myself, hide from the intensity of his stare, but he caught my hands. "Don't," he said softly. "Let me see you." I swallowed hard and let my hands fall to my sides. He kissed his way down my body, my collarbone, my ribs, the soft skin of my stomach, each touch reverent, worshipful. I gasped, my back arching, and he smiled against my skin. "So responsive," he murmured. "I love that." I couldn't answer. Could barely breathe. My hands fisted in the sheets as he continued his exploration, his mouth and hands igniting fires everywhere he touched. "Dante," I gasped. "Please, please what?" His voice was rough, teasing. "I don't know." My voice broke. I need. "I know what you need." He rose above me, his eyes blazing. "And I'm going to give it to you." He undressed himself, his movements efficient and controlled, and I couldn't look away. He was beautiful, all lean muscle and controlled power, his body a map of scars and violence, evidence of the life he lived. He saw me staring and paused. Second thoughts? No. I reached out, hesitant, and traced one of the scars across his ribs. "Does it hurt?" "Not anymore." "What happened?" "Another life." He caught my hand and brought it to his lips. "It doesn't matter now." He settled between my legs, his weight pressing me into the mattress, and kissed me again. I wrapped my arms around his neck, pulling him closer, needing him closer. "Tell me if it's too much," he murmured. "It's not." He moved slowly, carefully, watching my face the entire time. There was a moment of pressure, a brief flash of discomfort, and then, "Oh," I gasped, my nails digging into his shoulders, and he stilled immediately. "Mira?" "Don't stop," I whispered. He kissed me, slow and deep, as he began to move. It was overwhelming, the fullness, the intimacy, the way he was looking at me like I was the only thing that mattered. "God," he rasped. "You feel." He didn't finish. Just kissed me harder, his control fracturing with every breath. I held on to him, lost in the rhythm, the heat, the feeling of being completely and utterly his. After, we lay tangled together, his arms wrapped around me, his heartbeat steady beneath my ear. "Are you okay?" he asked quietly. I nodded against his chest. "Yes." "Did I hurt you?" "No." I tilted my head to look up at him. "You were gentle." His hand moved to stroke my hair, his touch impossibly tender. "You're mine now." The possessiveness in his voice should have scared me, but it didn't, because I wanted to be his. "I know," I whispered. He kissed the top of my head, and I felt him relax, just slightly, like he'd been holding his breath and could finally let go. "Sleep," he murmured. "I've got you." And for the first time in weeks, I did. I woke to sunlight and the feeling of Dante's arms still around me. He was awake, watching me with those dark, unreadable eyes. "Good morning," he said softly. "Morning." I stretched, wincing slightly at the soreness in my body. He noticed immediately. "Are you hurt?" "Just a little sore." Guilt flashed across his face. I should have been more careful. "Dante." I placed my hand over his. "I'm fine. More than fine." He studied me for a long moment, then pulled me closer, burying his face in my hair. "I don't deserve you," he said quietly. "Maybe not." I smiled against his chest. "But you have me anyway." His arms tightened around me, and in that moment, wrapped in his warmth, I felt safer than I'd ever felt in my life. Even knowing the danger that waited beyond these walls, even knowing that everything could fall apart at any moment. Because right now, I was his, and he was mine. The peace shattered 3 days later. I was in the library, curled up with a book, when I heard the gunshots. Sharp, loud, too close. I dropped the book and ran to the window. The grounds were chaos men running, shouting in Italian, the crack of gunfire echoing through the gardens. Dante burst through the door, his face grim. "Basement, now." "What's happening?" "Now, Mira." He grabbed my hand, pulling me toward the hallway. More gunshots. Closer. The sound of breaking glass. We ran down a side staircase I'd never seen before, through a hidden door, into a windowless room lined with concrete. A safe room. Dante pushed me inside and turned to leave. "Wait." I grabbed his arm. "Where are you going?" "To end this." "No." My grip tightened. "Stay with me." I can't. His expression was hard, cold, the Mafia boss, not the man who'd held me last night. They're here for you. I have to stop them. Don't. He cupped my face, kissing me hard and fast. Stay here. Don't open this door for anyone but me. I'm scared. I know. His thumb brushed my cheek. But I'll come back. I promise. He pulled away and shut the door, the lock clicking into place. And I was alone in the dark. Time lost meaning. I sat on the floor, knees pulled to my chest, listening to the muffled sounds of violence above. Gunfire. Shouting. Once, an explosion that shook the walls. I prayed. I didn't know to who or what. I just prayed that he'd come back, that he'd be okay, that I wouldn't lose him before I'd even really had him. The silence was worse than the noise. When the sound stopped, I waited, every muscle tense, straining to hear footsteps. Nothing. Minutes passed, maybe hours, I couldn't tell. Then a knock. Mira. Dante's voice. I scrambled to my feet and unlocked the door, throwing it open. He stood there, alive, blood splattered across his shirt and face. Not his blood, someone else's. Oh God. I reached for him, but he stepped back. Don't. His voice was flat. Not until I clean up. I don't care. I do. He looked at me, and I saw the darkness in his eyes. I don't want you to see me like this. Too late. I pulled him inside and wrapped my arms around him, not caring about the blood, the violence, any of it. He stiffened, then slowly relaxed, his arms coming around me. You came back, I whispered. Always. His voice was rough. I'll always come back. He showered and changed, and we sat in the safe room together, his arm around my shoulders, my head resting against his chest. What happened? I asked finally. Costas sent men, 12 of them. Dante's jaw tightened. They breached the gates, got into the house. Are they dead? He said it without emotion. All of them. I should have been horrified, disgusted, but I wasn't, because he'd done it to protect me. This is my fault, I whispered. No. His voice sharpened. This is his fault, and he's going to pay for it. How? He didn't answer. I lifted my head to look at him. Dante, what are you going to do? His eyes were cold, merciless. What I should have done weeks ago. You're going to kill him. Yes. I swallowed hard. When? Tonight. He left at sunset. I begged him not to go. Begged him to send someone else, to stay with me, to be safe. But he just kissed my forehead and walked out the door. And I was left alone again, waiting, praying. He came back just before dawn. I was sitting on the terrace, wrapped in a blanket, unable to sleep. I heard his footsteps and turned. He looked tired, older. The darkness in his eyes was deeper now, carved into his expression like a scar. It's done, he said quietly. He's dead? Yes. I should have felt relief. Victory. But all I felt was emptiness. Are you okay? I asked. He laughed, a hollow, bitter sound. No. I stood and crossed to him, taking his hands in mine. They were clean now, no trace of blood, but I could still see it, the weight of what he'd done. Come to bed, I said softly. He shook his head. I don't think I can sleep. Then don't sleep. Just lie with me. He studied me for a long moment, then nodded. We lay in the dark, his arms around me, his breathing slow and steady. Do you regret it? I asked quietly. Killing him? No. His voice was certain. He made his choice. I made mine. And me? I turned in his arms to face him. Do you regret me? Never. He cupped my face, his eyes fierce. You're the only good thing in my life. The only thing that makes sense. Even though I brought you this, you didn't bring me anything. His thumb brushed across my cheek. This life was mine long before you. All you did was give me a reason to survive it. Tears burned in my eyes. I love you, he said softly. The words stole my breath. I know I shouldn't, he continued. I know it's too soon, too complicated. But I do. I love you, Mira. And I'm not sorry for it. A tear slipped down my cheek. He wiped it away. You don't have to say it back, he murmured. I just needed you to know. But I did say it. Because it was true. I love you too. He kissed me then, slow and deep and achingly tender, and for the first time since the gunfire started, I felt the fear ease, because we were still here, still together, and that was enough. The days after Costas's death were strange, quiet but tense, waiting. Dante was busier than ever, meetings, phone calls, men coming and going at all hours. The power vacuum Costas left behind was already causing problems, and Dante had to move quickly to consolidate control. I tried to stay out of the way, tried to be patient, but I felt restless, caged. "When can I leave?" I asked one night over dinner. Dante looked up from his plate, his expression guarded. "Leave? Go home. Back to my apartment, my life." "You can't." "Why not?" "Costas is dead. The threat's over." "No." His voice was flat. "It's not. Don't. There are 3 other families watching me now," he said, setting down his fork, waiting to see if I show weakness. "If you leave, if I let you go back to your normal life, they'll see it as an opening. So I'm just supposed to stay here forever?" "Yes." The word hung between us, heavy and absolute. "That's not fair," I said quietly. "I know." His jaw tightened. "But it's the truth. I had a life before you, and now you have a different one." He leaned forward, his gaze intense. "I'm not keeping you prisoner, Mira. You can leave any time you want. But if you do," he paused, "I can't protect you. So it's not really a choice." "No," he agreed. "It's not." I stood, my chair scraping against the floor. "I need air. Mira." I left before he could finish. I walked the gardens alone, the cold night air biting at my skin. I loved him. God help me, I did. But I also missed my life, my freedom, the simplicity of being just Mira, not the woman the Mafia boss couldn't let go. "You're angry." I turned. Dante stood a few feet away, hands in his pockets, his expression unreadable. "I'm not angry," I said. "I'm trapped." "I know. Do you?" I stepped toward him. "Do you know what it's like to have your entire life taken from you? To be told you can't go home? Can't see your friends? Can't even walk down the street without guards?" "Yes." His voice was quiet. "I do." I stopped. "What?" "I've lived in a cage my entire life," he said. "A beautiful one, maybe, but still a cage. I don't know what freedom feels like either." My anger faltered. "I'm sorry," he continued. "I wish I could give you normal, give you safe, but I can't. This is all I have." He gestured toward the house. "This life, this world, and if you stay, it becomes yours too. And if I don't," pain flickered in his eyes, "then I let you go, and spend the rest of my life making sure you're safe from a distance." "You'd do that?" "Yes," he said it without hesitation. "If it meant you were happy." I stared at him, my heart aching. "I don't want to leave, but you want the choice." "Yes." He nodded slowly. "Then here it is. Tomorrow morning I'll have a car take you anywhere you want to go. New city, new identity, enough money to start over. No guards, no surveillance. You'll be free. And you? I'll stay here." His voice was steady. "And I'll make sure no one ever touches you, even if it breaks you." His smile was sad, especially then. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the library, staring at the fire, thinking about everything he'd said. I could leave, start over, be free. But freedom without him felt hollow, because somewhere along the way, he'd become my home. Not this house, not this life him. His arms around me, his voice in the dark, the way he looked at me like I was the only thing that mattered. And I realized, I didn't want freedom. I wanted him. I found him on the terrace at dawn, watching the sunrise. "I'm not leaving," I said. He turned, surprise flickering in his eyes. "Mira." "I'm not leaving," I repeated. "Not today. Not ever." "You don't have to." "I know." I crossed to him, taking his hands. "But I want to. I choose this. I choose you. Even knowing what it means. Especially knowing what it means." I looked up at him, my heart steady. "I love you, Dante. And I'm not running from that." He pulled me into his arms, holding me so tightly I could barely breathe. "I don't deserve you," he whispered. "Probably not." I smiled against his chest. "But you're stuck with me anyway." He laughed, a real laugh, and kissed the top of my head. And I knew, in that moment, I'd made the right choice. 3 months later, life settled into a new rhythm. I learned the language of Dante's world, the codes, the hierarchies, the careful dances of power. I met his people, earned their respect, became more than just the woman he protected. I became his partner. Maria taught me to cook. Dante taught me to shoot. And slowly, carefully, I carved out a space for myself in his dark, dangerous life. It wasn't easy. There were threats, always threats. Rival families testing boundaries, politicians demanding favors, moments when Dante came home with blood on his hands and shadows in his eyes. But there were good moments too. Mornings in bed, wrapped in his arms. Evenings in the library, reading while he worked. Nights on the terrace, watching the city lights, and talking about everything and nothing. He was still dangerous, still ruthless when he needed to be. But with me, he was gentle, loving, human, and I loved him for it. The wedding was small, just Maria, a few of Dante's most trusted men, and a priest who didn't ask questions. I wore a simple white dress. Dante wore a black suit, and when he slipped the ring onto my finger, his hands shook. "Mine," he whispered. "Yours," I agreed. And when he kissed me, it felt like a promise. Not of happily ever after, but of something real, something earned. A life built on blood and choice and love that refused to break. 6 months after that, the call came. I was in the study, reviewing accounts, when Dante burst in, his face pale. "What's wrong?" I stood, my heart racing. "Luca." He spat the name like a curse. "He's made a move, took out one of my supply lines, killed 4 of my men." I'd heard about Luca, a rising underboss from the south, ambitious and reckless. "What are you going to do?" I asked. "End him." Dante's expression was cold, merciless. "Before he ends me, let me help." He shook his head. "No, it's too dangerous. I'm your wife." I moved toward him, meeting his gaze. "Your partner. If you go to war, I go with you." "Mira, don't protect me from this," I said firmly. "Not anymore. I chose this life. Let me live it." He stared at me, conflict warring in his eyes. Then, slowly, he nodded. "Together," he said. "Together." The war with Luca lasted 3 months. It was brutal, violent. People died, some of ours, more of his. Dante moved like a force of nature, ruthless and precise, and I stood beside him, learning the cost of power. There were nights I couldn't sleep, haunted by the things I'd seen. Nights I clung to Dante in the dark, needing his warmth to drive away the cold. But we survived. And when it was over, when Luca lay dead and his empire crumbled, we stood in the ruins and knew this would never end. There would always be another threat, another enemy, another war, but we'd face them together. 1 year after the wedding, I stood on the terrace at sunset, watching the city below. Dante came up behind me, wrapping his arms around my waist, resting his chin on my shoulder. "Regrets?" he asked quietly. "No." I leaned back against him. "You?" "Never." We stood there in silence, watching the light fade. "Do you think we'll ever be safe?" I asked. "No." His voice was honest. "But we'll be together. Is that enough? For me?" He turned me in his arms, his gaze steady and sure. "Yes." I smiled and kissed him, soft and slow. And in that moment, with the danger lurking just beyond the horizon, I realized this was my life now. Dark, dangerous, far from perfect. But it was mine, and I wouldn't trade it for anything. 2 years later, I woke to the sound of Dante's voice, low and soothing, speaking Italian. I opened my eyes and found him standing by the window, holding our daughter. She was 3 months old, tiny and perfect, with his dark eyes and my soft features. He'd named her Sophia, after his mother. "Good morning," I said quietly. He turned, smiling. "Good morning." I watched as he cradled her, his massive hands impossibly gentle, and my heart swelled. This man, this dangerous, ruthless man, was a father now, and he was beautiful at it. "She's awake," he murmured, bringing her to the bed. I took her, settling her against my chest, and Dante sat beside us, his arm around my shoulders. "I never thought I'd have this," he said quietly. "What?" "Family." He looked at me, his eyes soft. "Love. Something worth protecting that isn't built on fear." "You deserve it," I said. "Maybe." He kissed my temple. "But I'm grateful for it anyway." Sophia made a small sound, and we both smiled. Outside, the world was still dangerous. There were still threats, still enemies waiting in the shadows. But here, in this moment, we were safe. We were whole, and that was enough.